uncle was a sheriff in a small town in New Mexico. He was the most hardcore person in our family, super straight-laced, never really BS'd and wasn't at all a joker. So when he told his story, backed up by my aunt, we all believed it without question. A local reporter named Bob D. would always show up at major police activity from his police scanner. Big car wrecks, fires, anything worth reporting in the local paper. Everybody on the force knew Bob D. He was around at least once or twice a week at various police activities. Bob was a bit of a joker himself. He would mess with people by flicking behind their ears. People would react to the flicks thinking it was a bug, only to turn around and see it was Bob jerking around. Everybody liked Bob. Unfortunately, Bob had bad lung cancer and died pretty suddenly. His wife buried him against his wishes. He wanted to be cremated. For the next couple of weeks after his funeral, people kept talking about seeing Bob at car wrecks, fires, all the same stuff he used to report on. There were 20 to 30 reports like this from civilians and members of the force. My uncle didn't buy it. Until the night he and my aunt showed up at our front door, gun drawn, pale as paper. We asked him what the hell happened, and he had to sit down, take a breath, compose himself, and start to outline what happened. Note, this is a guy that I never saw get rattled by anything. He said, him and my aunt were sitting on the couch in their house watching TV. My uncle kept scratching at his ear over and over. Finally, my aunt asked him what the problem was, and he turned around just in time to see their bedroom door open, Bob D. standing there in the doorway, clear as day. My uncle jumped up, cussed or something, got my aunt's attention, who turned to see him there too. As soon as they both made eye contact with Bob, Bob smiled, turned, walked across the living room and out the front door, closing the door behind himself, and was gone. My uncle got control of himself and ran outside, gun drawn, looking for Bob, but he was gone. At that point, they ran over to our place. We went over there and didn't see anything, but my aunt and uncle stayed at our place that night. At work the next day, all the guys on the force were giving my uncle lots of "we told you so." People around town said they saw Bob D. show up at police scenes for at least another 2 to 3 months. My dad saw him in our dark room in our basement with a friend. He was flicking their ears in the dark. During the 3rd month, people that saw him kept saying he looked worse and worse. My uncle saw him 2 more times, each time confirming he was looking more and more worn. My dad had concluded that he was decomposing, and his ghost was reflecting that process. Every time my ear itches, I get goosebumps. This actually happened to me on Halloween morning one year. I lived in a small apartment with an open floor plan where I could see the entire apartment from my kitchen. I was in the kitchen packing my lunch to take to work when the TV suddenly turned on by itself, volume on full blast, to some staticky channel that kept cutting in and out. I was nowhere near the remote or TV, and I had no other people or animals living with me who could have done it accidentally. It's not the scariest thing ever, but it definitely freaked me out at the time. It never happened before, and it's never happened since. I have no idea how the TV turned on. The scariest moment of my life happened while my friend and I were camping in eastern Canada as teenagers. we decided to sleep in this abandoned camper we found in a large forest that was near our town. It had been there so long that small trees had grown around it. We'd stumbled across it when we were exploring a few months back and thought it would be cool and brave to sleep there for a night. So one weekend we did it. We arrived after dark because we had gotten lost trying to find the camper again. We had a really low power flashlight, so it made it even more difficult. Once we finally found it, we opened the rusty door and stepped in. The sounds inside of the camper were shrill and echoey. There were typical camper things strewn about: cups, empty cans, novels. Already tired, we decided to hold up in one end of the camper where the bed area had originally been, before the cushions had rotted away to almost nothing. A long hallway stretched the length of the camper so we could basically see from end to end. It was a miserable night. There were several rats living in there. I saw them staring at us from the chewed-out part of the ceiling. When the wind outside would blow, the camper would shriek and groan. We even thought we heard some animals or wolves outside walking around. Still, we feigned bravery and acted like we were having a good time, but we were on edge. At some point, I woke up in the middle of the night from an uncomfortable sleep. I sat up to adjust, and when I did, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye from the other end of the camper. There was a small window, and I could clearly see a man's silhouette. He was staring straight at me from the outside. At first I thought maybe it was a weird shape of a tree or something, but when I moved a bit to get a better look at the person, he clearly reacted and then froze. My heart started pumping, and I woke up my friend immediately saying, "Someone is here," over and over in a whisper. Not taking my eyes off the profile, he woke up immediately, and I nodded towards the window. He saw him too. We whispered frantically about who it could be and why he was staring at us, and for the next 10 minutes, no joke, we stared him down. The longer we stared at him, the more frightened we got. Occasionally he would move, but always keeping his eyes locked on us. Eventually I shouted, "Hey!" No reaction. My friend was braver than me and decided to shine the flashlight at him. As soon as he did, we realized our horrible mistake. It wasn't a window at all on the other side of the camper. It was a mirror. We had been staring down ourselves from the very start. Completely idiotic. Still, it was the most fearful, relieving, and funny moment of my life that I'll never forget. Closest to the paranormal I've ever been.